The rain fell hard on the streets of Lagos, pouring down like the sky itself was weeping. Amahle stood quietly under her small umbrella, next to her puff-puff stall. The oil sizzled beside her as the dough browned into golden balls. But she barely noticed. Her eyes were lost in the distance, her heart somewhere far away. She was only 28, but her face held the weight of someone who had seen too much pain. Her clothes were simple, her hair tied back in a scarf soaked with rain, and her sandals were half buried in the muddy water. Still, she stood tall, like someone who refused to break. A black and white photo inside a plastic sleeve hung from one of the wooden poles of her stall. It was of a man, handsome, smiling, proud. Obinna, her husband. They had only been married for 5 months when the accident happened. He had gone out to buy groceries and never came back. A speeding truck crushed his car. Just like that, he was gone. Obinna had loved Amahle deeply. He had fought his rich family just to marry her. A poor girl who sold snacks on the roadside. They never accepted her. And after his death, they didn't even let her into the house. They kicked her out, pregnant, heartbroken, and alone. She spent weeks sleeping inside a church, hiding her pain and her growing belly. But she didn't beg. She didn't break. She got back up and started selling puff-puffs again, the same way she had when she first met Obinna. Now, as thunder rumbled above her and the scent of fried dough filled the air, Amahle whispered to herself, "I hope you're proud of me, Obinna." And then she kept working. The next afternoon, the sky turned gray again. The clouds rolled, in heavy and dark, and the wind carried the smell of more rain. Amahle tightened the ropes on her umbrella and adjusted her small table of puff-puffs. Business was slow on rainy days, but she stayed. She always stayed. A black SUV rolled to a slow stop in front of her stall. Its windows were tinted, and for a moment, she thought the driver might just move along. But the door opened, and a tall man stepped out. He wore a neat black suit, shiny leather shoes, and held an expensive phone in his hand. His face was handsome but hard. No smile, no warmth. He didn't look around. He didn't even seem to notice the rain. He walked straight to the stall. 100 naira, he said, pointing at the puff-puffs. Amahle packed a few into a paper wrap and handed it to him. He gave her the money without looking her in the eyes. "Thank you," she said. He turned to leave, still silent. She frowned. "You're welcome, by the way," she added sharply. "Some of us may be poor, but we still have manners." The man stopped. For a second, Amahle regretted saying anything. Maybe he was dangerous. Maybe she had gone too far. Her heart beat faster. But then, to her surprise, the corner of his mouth lifted, just a little. He got back into his SUV and drove off without another word. The next day, the same car pulled up again. Amahle blinked in surprise as he stepped out, walked to her stall, and said softly, 200 today. He didn't smile, but he also didn't look away. Amahle simply nodded and gave him extra. From that day on, Tajudeen came every afternoon, rain or shine. He never spoke much, just stood by the stall, bought puff-puffs, and sometimes sat on the small wooden bench nearby while he ate. Amahle started getting used to him, though she still didn't know what to make of it. His quiet, serious nature. She noticed things. He always wore black. He never smiled fully. He never answered personal questions. But he listened. One day, as the sun burned over the wet Lagos street, she spoke without thinking. "You don't talk much," she said, handing him his usual pack. He looked at her for a moment. "I listen." She paused, then slowly began to open up. Not everything, just small pieces. About selling puff-puff for years, about raising a child alone, about the nights she cried herself to sleep, but still woke up to fry dough. Tajudeen never interrupted. He just stood there, eating quietly. It became a rhythm. She talked. He listened. One evening, after she finished telling him about how she once went a whole week eating only puff-puffs herself, he finally spoke. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly. She raised an eyebrow. "Your wife?" He shook his head. "My mother. She was like you, quiet, strong, stubborn in the best way." Amahle didn't know what to say. The moment felt too heavy to joke about. Then he cleared his throat. "I need a cook. Someone real. Someone who knows how to bring life into a kitchen. Come work for me." Amahle blinked, stunned. "Me?" she asked. "A cook? In your house?" He nodded once. "Yes. Think about it." And just like that, he walked back to his car and drove away. Amahle stood in front of the tall gates, clutching her small bag. A uniformed guard waved, her in after a phone call, and the gates slowly opened. Her sandals made soft sounds on the clean stone path as she stepped into a world she had never known. The mansion was huge. Tall ceilings, glass everywhere, floors so shiny they reflected her face. Everything was clean, expensive, cold. A house like this should have felt magical, but it didn't. It felt empty. No sound of laughter, no smell of food, just silence and the low hum of the air conditioner. Tajudeen appeared at the top of the stairs, still in black, still quiet. He nodded once. "Kitchen's that way. Make what you like." Amahle nodded and walked in slowly. The kitchen was larger than her entire apartment had been. Polished steel counters, rows of unused appliances, spotless shelves. It looked like it had never seen fire or oil. She tied her scarf tighter and got to work. Soon the scent of puff-puffs and pepper stew filled the house. She hummed softly, mixing, frying, stirring. For the first time, this house began to feel like it was breathing. Tajudeen walked into the kitchen and paused. He didn't speak, just closed his eyes for a moment and inhaled deeply. That night, while looking for the broom in one of the back rooms, Amahle opened a door and froze. Photos. Dozens of them, all of children. But each picture had been torn, carefully, precisely, down the middle. Faces cut apart, smiles split in two. 3 different kids, all dark-skinned, all joyful, all broken in the frame. She stood still, her heart beating fast. And for the first time, she wondered what kind of pain Tajudeen was really hiding. Later that evening, Amahle found Tajudeen sitting alone in the backyard. The garden was perfect. Trimmed bushes, quiet water fountain, even glowing lights along the edges. But he sat there like a statue, staring into nothing. She walked over slowly, unsure if she should say anything. "You found the room," he said quietly, without looking at her. Amahle nodded. "I didn't mean to." He sighed. "They were mine, or I thought they were. 3 kids. I raised them, fed them, loved them." He paused, then added, "Until I found out they weren't mine at all. Not a single one day. I found out I was infertile, and I can never be a father." Amahle covered her mouth in shock. "My wife was seeing someone else, for years, and I never knew. She took the kids and left, and I didn't fight. I didn't want to break more than I already had." Amahle sat beside him. "I lost my husband in a car crash," she whispered. "He was the only person who truly chose me. His family kicked me out like I was nothing." They sat in silence for a while, both staring at the dark sky and slowly falling in love with each other's pain. It was past midnight when Amahle's scream echoed through the quiet mansion. The rain pounded hard against the windows, thunder cracking like a warning from the sky. Power flickered, lights dimmed, and then came the cry again, sharper, more urgent. Tajudeen rushed upstairs. "What's wrong?" Amahle clutched her belly, sweat already forming on her forehead. "It's time," she whispered. "The baby's coming." Without a second thought, Tajudeen grabbed his car keys and umbrella, lifting her gently into his arms. The mansion staff scrambled as the front gates swung open. Rain soaked them both as he carried her to the SUV, ignoring how fast the water flooded the road. The drive to the hospital was tense and silent. Amahle clenched the seat. Tajudeen kept one hand on the wheel, the other gripping hers. "Just breathe," he said softly, eyes scanning the stormy road. At the hospital, nurses moved quickly, doors swung open, machines beeped, and then it happened. A baby's cry sliced through the noise, a healthy baby boy. Amahle drifted into sleep, exhausted. The doctor walked out with a small bundle. "He's perfect," she said, handing the baby to Tajudeen. Tajudeen looked down at the newborn, his throat tightening. He held him close, the weight unfamiliar but welcome. The baby's fingers curled around his thumb. That's when Tajudeen leaned in and whispered, "I'll protect you, both of you." Hours later, when Amahle woke up, Tajudeen was still holding the child. His eyes met hers. He walked over and said, "Marry me." Amahle blinked. "What? Not for show, not to save face, because I mean it. I want this, all of this." She stared at him for a long second. Then quietly she nodded. "Yes." The nurse smiled from the corner, already noting down the names. A week from now, there would be vows, music, peace. But not today. Outside the hospital, in a parked silver car across the street, someone sat watching. Obina's younger brother, Chuka. His eyes narrowed. He picked up his phone, his voice cold. "Found her. She just gave birth. Tell the family, it's time." The storm outside hadn't ended. It had just begun. The sun was soft that morning, golden light spilling gently through the cafe windows. Amahle sat near the back, cradling her baby boy, a warm towel over his small body. The smell of freshly fried puff-puffs lingered in the air. For a moment, everything felt still, like peace had finally made a home in her life. Until the door opened. Chuka, Obina's younger brother. He walked in like he owned the place. No greeting, no kindness, just sharp eyes and a voice full of command. "That baby belongs to us," he said coldly. "To my family. You were just the carrier. Obina's blood runs through him, not yours." Amahle stood, her arms tightening around her son. "You disowned me when I had nothing. Now you come for him?" Chuka stepped forward. "Our parents are ready to raise him properly. Wealth, education, legacy. You can't offer any of that." "This isn't about love," she said. "This is about control. And I won't let you in." Before he could reply, the door burst open again. "Tajudeen!" He stepped in, his presence filling the room like thunder. "Is there a problem?" Chuka scoffed. "Stay out of this. It's a family matter." "She is my family now," Tajudeen said calmly but firmly. "And that child, he is under my protection." The tension thickened. Chuka's jaw clenched. "You're not his father." "But I'm the one who's here," Tajudeen replied. "Loving him, providing for him, and I've already spoken to my lawyers." He tossed a file on the table. "You have no rights. The mother is the sole guardian. Any interference will be considered harassment, or worse." Chuka looked at the documents. He was silent. Then he turned and walked out, but not before muttering, "This isn't over." Amahle's knees weakened. Tajudeen caught her. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "I did," he said, "because I don't fight for things I don't love." Tears welled in her eyes, not of fear this time, but of certainty. That evening, the final touches for the wedding were laid out. It wouldn't be grand. It would be sacred, built not on tradition, but on trust. The garden shimmered in soft golden light. White cloths draped gently over wooden chairs, flowers bloomed in warm colors, and a light breeze rustled through the mango tree leaves. It wasn't a grand wedding, but it was perfect. Amahle walked down the stone path in a simple cream gown, holding her baby boy in her arms. He wore a tiny white outfit, blinking curiously at the world. Tajudeen stood at the altar beneath the mango tree, dressed in cream and gold, his eyes never leaving hers. When she reached him, he gently took her hand, and together they placed the baby in a small woven cradle beside them. "I don't need a choir or a crowd," Tajudeen whispered during his vows. "Just you and the life we've built." Amahle's voice trembled as she replied, "You stepped in when no one else would. You gave us safety. You gave us home. And I promise, I will never let that love go to waste." Their guests, few but dear, clapped gently. And as the mango tree swayed above them, they became husband and wife. Life after that settled into a new rhythm. Late-night feedings, whispered jokes over breakfast, Amahle laughing again, really laughing, while rocking the baby in the kitchen. Tajudeen held the baby often, humming softly as he cradled him, close, kissing his forehead like it was the most sacred thing he'd ever done. But one quiet night, as rain tapped against the windows and Amahle cleaned bottles at the sink, Tajudeen spoke. "I always wanted this," he said softly. "A family, a child of my own." She turned, confused. "I was told years ago I couldn't have kids," he confessed, voice low. "Doctors called it impossible. I've made peace with it. I swear, I have. He's my son, in every way that matters." Amahle walked over and held him. "You're his father. No test or bloodline changes that." Still the whispers came. Neighbors, passers-by, little comments. About Tajudeen raising another man's child. Amahle didn't flinch. "Love," she told him one day, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear, "is what makes a father, and that's what you are." Amahle wiped her forehead as she stirred the evening stew, her body feeling heavier than usual. The baby cooed in the cradle, and she smiled. But it was a tired smile, one pulled down by dizziness she couldn't shake. "I'm just exhausted," she told Tajudeen when he asked. "New mother things." But the tiredness didn't stop. It grew. So did the nausea. One morning she nearly fainted in the cafe. Tajudeen rushed her to the clinic, concern etched all over his face. A few tests, a long wait. Then the doctor returned, smiling strangely. "Congratulations," he said. "You're pregnant." Amahle blinked. That's not possible. He can't." The doctor held up the results. "I ran it twice. The child is his." Tajudeen sat in stunned silence. For a moment, he didn't breathe. Then his hand reached for Amahle's, trembling. "Mine," he whispered. The doctor nodded. Tajudeen's face crumpled. The quiet, composed man suddenly overwhelmed. He bent forward, resting his forehead against their joined hands. Tears rolled down his cheeks. "I never thought I'd hear someone call me Papa. For real." Amahle just held him. Months passed. When the time came, Tajudeen refused to leave her side. In the bright delivery room, he whispered encouragement, kissed her forehead, and held her hand through every contraction. Then, a cry. A new voice in the world. Joy. Their daughter. The nurse placed him in Tajudeen's arms. He looked down at the baby girl with disbelief, his big hands trembling around the tiny bundle. "You're really mine," he whispered. "You're really here?" Amahle, exhausted but glowing, smiled from the bed. "You got your miracle." Weeks later, inside her newly opened cafe, Second Chances, Amahle stood behind the counter, apron on, flour dusting her cheek. On the wall behind her hung a framed photo. Her, Tajudeen, the first baby in his arms, and joy curled up in hers. Below it, in simple gold lettering, it read, "He gave me shelter, I gave him love, and God gave us a miracle." The bell above. The cafe door rang. A customer walked in. Outside, the rain began to fall. But this time, Amahle smiled. In our society, widows, especially pregnant widows or single mothers, are often judged or looked at with pity. But kindness always brings double the reward in the end. My besties, if you agree, write "agree" in the comments section.